My hair is a bit of a mess, so let's just pretend that it looks okay. Basically, I decided to make a YouTube channel so that I could share some of my art, some of my life experiences and stories about mental health, stories about growing up, women's issues, social issues, and basically to yap and talk about things. I think my whole life I've been told that I talk too much, that I should have a TV show, a radio show. So I kind of just decided I'm turning 30, I'm not getting any younger, and I wanted to challenge myself this year to do new things and to go out of my comfort zone, because I've always loved watching films and watching content and watching other people do it, but I'm really uncomfortable in front of a camera. I feel like I'm so used to being the one with the camera. So since I was maybe, trying to think now, like 14, 15, I have a like whole collection of film cameras and like just little point and shoot kind of analog things. I used to go into like charity shops in Northern Ireland and buy cameras basically, and then I would shoot some film. I would always forget about them, and then I would get them developed not knowing what's on them, and it's like photos of me going around the play park in Northern Ireland when I was 17. And I'm kind of all over the place. I think as a creative person I always just kind of thought, oh, this is just being creative, like being a bit of chaos, a bit of disorganization, and only now that I'm basically turning 30 I realised, oh, maybe I actually have ADHD. So I am getting an assessment, so we'll see what they say, because I don't know, I think my whole family are kind of like me, and I always thought it was just who we were. Like we always would be talking over each other, arguing, couldn't finish our stories, couldn't finish our sentences. They used to tell me that I must have been communicating telepathically, because I would say something and they just wouldn't hear it, and then I would like be overthinking it and be like, oh my god, did I say that in my head or did I actually say that out loud? And now I've just realised as I got older that no, I think we all have some sort of degree of neurodivergency, and yeah, I think it's kind of been a whole journey of me like reading more about it and actually realising, oh, this explains a lot, like explains why I kind of went more towards the creative route, and also just kind of struggled in high school and traditional, even in uni as well, with my organisation and being able to plan for the future. I would always have to leave things the last minute. So I remember like my GCSEs, actually even before my GCSEs, my first year of high school, both of my older sisters got into like the top set, so they were obviously very proud of themselves and they were like, oh my god, like we're so smart. And then I got into like the middle set, and I remember we had like exams in January that was meant to determine if we got moved up a set or down a set. And at the time I knew I had to revise, but I would go to bed and get my Nintendo SP out and I would just be hiding it. If my mum came into the room, I just made it look like I was revising. Actually got promoted to the higher set, which surprised my family. I think they were just like, oh, Heather's a bit slow, like she's not as intelligent, let's say, as my sisters. I think I just had things that I was really good at and things that I struggled with. So like even in primary school, my reading age and my literacy was above average for my age. I can't remember now, but I know they told me like, oh, you're reading like a 16-year-old, let's say, and I was maybe like 12, 13. But then my numeracy and my maths was a disaster, and I had to get like special tutoring at school. My dad had to help me after school. Like I just needed extra support. So whenever I went into high school, that continued into my GCSEs, I was being projected to get like a D or an E, I think. So I was really worried about not passing my maths, because I know like that's kind of essential to get jobs, and everyone puts such a just pressure on you to get your English, get your maths. I was always really good at English. Letters, words, I always loved that. I always loved reading. But maths I really struggled with. I did get a C. Pretty pleased with that, to be fair. In the end I ended up getting, I think like mostly A stars, A's and a few B's, and then that one C. Which surprised my whole family because, yeah, GCSEs, I was taking study leave, but I would just like, I remember I would just lie in bed. I would stay up late at night and then I would lie in bed and like watch NME TV. So that's a little throwback because now they're not here anymore. But yeah, I would listen to NME TV. I would go into my brother's room and play the PlayStation. I'd be playing Call of Duty. I'd be playing The Sims. I would be playing FIFA, I think, even. Need for Speed, Grand Theft Auto, just whatever I could get my hands on, really. And then it would be like the night before the exam and I would be staying up all night. I would get no sleep. I would be just cramming all this stuff. I kind of had to like find ways for me to remember things as a visual learner. So I think I would write notes or like write like little acronyms, different like bullet points to kind of, so I could like know the key points sort of thing. I also made up little rhymes, little songs, because songs stay in my head better than the notes. So yeah, I was able to flick my way through that. But I think I probably could have did a lot better if I actually prepared and actually thought ahead and took my time studying. I would like to say that I'm different now. Obviously I'm not in school or an educational environment, so I don't really have to use those things. But like my A levels, it was the same thing. And then I got glandular fever. So I was actually allowed extra time in the exam room, but because I had nothing else to say, like I didn't revise enough and I was actually dead inside. I don't know how I even did those exams. Like it was crazy. I had like, with the glandular fever, it just kind of ruined my immune system. So I had like, I came into school, put on makeup and thought, oh, I look good compared to what I did look like at home. I was sleeping for days. I lost like 1.5 stone. And I went in and my teachers were like, Heather, you need to go home. Like, you look awful. Because I had like a lump on my eyeball, like some sort of eye infection. I had ear infections. I can't even really remember, but I couldn't even swallow water because the glandular fever hit me so bad. So I somehow fluked my way through them too, got into uni, and then kind of had the same issues where I would have to leave things to the last minute, but now I was doing like fashion and textiles. Well, like textile art, design and fashion design is like the actual name of the course. But I would be making myself physically sick with anxiety and nerves the night before. Because it wasn't exams per se, it was actually, we had to show that we had been working, like, let's say 40 or 60 hours a week or something on our projects. And it was a lot of like research and design, sketchbooks, like prototyping, toiling, getting all our like textiles in order, getting all of our just proof that we've actually been to class and we've done things. And a lot of the time I didn't go to class, or I was just disorganized. I was a bit cluttered. Everything was all over the place. So it was kind of a bit hit or miss, but I did manage to get my 2-1. I think I was quite close to a first, actually. I think my dissertation, I got a first in because, as I say, like I was good at writing, and I was good at, I think that's why I was able to do my exams in school, because I was able to cram information in my head for 1 day or 2 days, get it down on the paper and make it look like I know what I'm talking about. But whenever it came to practical things, so like I know like things like in technology, home economics, I could do the theory, but as soon as they were like, okay, make something with this bandsaw, or like bake me a cake, I just struggled, and that kind of like always brought my marks down. But yeah, it's just fun to reminisce about all of the just drama with uni and stuff. I was considering going back to do a master's either in fine art or in art therapy. But then I realised like the amount of just stress and like organisation that goes into it. And then on top of that, the fees, like I'm living in London, so like studying in London is more expensive than studying in Northern Ireland, which is why I did my bachelor's in Belfast, because I always wanted to come to London, but my family were kind of like, it's expensive, you can't live there, like stay at home. And they were really pushing me, like not even to go to uni, they wanted me to go to a local technical college, and they were like, oh, you like doing your own hair, why don't you be a hairdresser, or why don't you do childcare? Because these are what people were doing where I was from, and they wanted to keep me close by. So like from the age of like 18 to, let me see, when I moved to London, I think I was 26. Yeah, 26, 27. I had to basically fight to get here. My mum was like, once you get your degree, because I had to defer for a few years, she was like, once you get that, you can actually go. And then COVID happened. I was looking after my granny with dementia. I had to get just money together. And then I finally moved in 2021. So like summer of 2021. So it's been nearly 4 years this summer. So now we're in March. So yeah, 4 years in July. And it feels like I haven't been here that long. But at the same time, it also feels like I've been here for longer. The thing is with London as well, though, the friend that I had that lived here, she's kind of like moved away. And most people I meet, they go back home, they go travelling. So it has kind of just been difficult to find a solid kind of friendship group here, because every time I meet someone, and I'm like, oh my God, like, we get along really well, like, this is a proper friend. They're away to France, they're away to Kent, which isn't that far, but still, they're away to Korea. Figuring that one out, but yeah, I've just been rambling. My hair has never been this long. Growing up, because I always bleached it, I'd have like rainbow hair one day, pink hair the next day, grey and purple hair, like silver. My hair gets tangled so easily, and because I'm kind of embracing my waves of my natural hair texture, I just don't really brush it that much, so this is why it looks like this. So just don't pay it no mind. But I think I actually need a glass of water because it's quite a lot. Remember to drink water, kids. So this is one of my little paintings, mixed media, embroidery sort of things. I love reading things about psychology. I love reading self-help books and books about empowerment, and also about being able to set boundaries and be, I guess, just to look after yourself more, and to really champion your own mental health, because yes, like we do have all these pressures on us, and we do have perhaps family members and friends that are going through a tough time, and we want to be there for them. But I know I've had the experience of kind of always being there for people, but then whenever I need help, I tend to isolate myself until it gets to the stage where it's actually too much and something drastic happens, or I get unwell, or like I'm not sleeping for days, and then I eventually actually tell people, and then they're always shocked because they're like, why did you not mention something sooner? But I think like we all deal with things differently. I think it is good that there is more of a conversation around mental health and around self-love, self-care, self-respect, putting boundaries in, not bowing to peer pressure, or being switched on and being aware of our surroundings and aware of how these things make us feel. And I think it is something that at least I have got more aware of as I've got older, even though my whole life I've kind of been, not my whole life, but from my teenage years anyway, studying psychology, I always I loved like reading about like crowd mentality and conditioned behaviours and the importance of sleep and just different things like that. But I think it's one thing to have a knowledge on it and then actually to go through it and be in a lived experience where you can say, okay, it's took me all these years to learn this lesson, because I'm still learning things at this age. Like only recently I've had to kind of assess how I speak to myself. That's a big thing. I think as someone who struggles with low self-esteem and depression and anxiety at times, it is a habit of mine from childhood to be very harsh and critical of myself and to kind of expect the worst in a situation and to be in my head about things. So like even now I do still have these things in my head, but I can kind of rationalize them more now that I've got older, and also just accept that, yeah, sometimes people won't like me. I think it's a big thing to kind of learn if you've come from a background of people pleasing or trying to adapt your behaviour and your personality and how you are around people just to kind of fit in, not draw attention to yourself, or be judged in a certain way. And I feel like that is something that I'm still kind of trying to finesse and be more certain of. But I think this year anyway, I've kind of had a few experiences with people I've met and different scenarios where I was like, oh, I think they maybe just don't like me, or I'm a bit, as people would say to me, like I'm a bit much, or like, which I don't really believe. I think if they are the right person for you and the right friend or the right partner, the right job, etc., I think they will accept you as you are. and they will be supportive and just celebrate every part of you and every aspect of your personality. So that's why I've kind of got to the stage now where I'm like, okay, if I do have that feeling like, oh shit, you know, I've said something, or like I've did something where they don't really want to see me again, or they've grown distant with me, now I'm just kind of like, okay, like that's fine. There's some people that I've done that to because I didn't like their energy, or I didn't feel like we were aligned, or just it was kind of forced. It wasn't like a natural relationship. So I've kind of just got to the stage now where I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'd rather be with people who are accepting of me and the true version of myself, authentic version, in all its capacity and all the little quirks and little behaviors I have. I'd rather someone knows them and accepts them as they are than have someone who I'm constantly having to silence myself or make myself smaller, edit my speech, and even just like double guessing and thinking, oh, should I say this? Should I do this? Do they like me? Do they not? Why have they not opened my message? Like all these things that kind of ruminate in my mind as someone with anxiety. I don't actually need that. I already have enough things to worry about that drain my energy. So I think, especially in things like friendships, I think it's important to just recognize these behaviors and how someone makes you feel. I think it's easy to kind of concentrate on the good times, or like, especially if it's a long-term friendship, different memories where you're like, oh, that was amazing, and like I loved that time together, and like we've known each other so many years, for example. But being able to say, okay, that is all well and good, but here's a list of things that happened more recently, or maybe even in the past as well, that you kind of just let them get away with, just kind of let them take advantage of you, or, you know, like you can just grow apart as friends, and that's fine. But it's kind of just recognizing these things and recognizing within yourself how they make you feel. Are they supportive at all times? Are they someone who gives you energy, and it's a reciprocal thing where you can just talk normally and openly, just naturally having that chemistry and that vibe? Or is it someone who, you know, you kind of feel a bit bad after seeing them, or you feel a bit drained? I think it is important to kind of notice these little signs and just be, I guess, in touch with your emotions. And not only your emotions, I think for me a lot of it is physical as well. I do get a lot of like headaches. I would get headaches. I would get like a dry mouth, like anxiety kind of symptoms, and just like my energy levels, like I might be completely drained after going out and seeing people. Another thing I get, which I don't really know what it is, I've kind of been to the doctor to ask if it is myalgia, fibromyalgia. But one thing I do get is it might not be a very strenuous day, or it's not like I'm going to the gym for hours or whatever. Like it could just be I've lay in bed all day, I've had a chill day, but then I have an event to go to, or like something that causes me anxiety, and once I get home I will just be in agony, like all over, like my limbs, my feet and everything. It's usually, I think, mostly from like the hips down, but like I'll have a lot of just like aching pains, and no matter how much I rearrange myself or even like take paracetamol, like it's still there. The only thing that kind of fixes it is whenever I go to sleep, and usually by the next day I feel a bit better, but it does affect my sleep. And then when I'm not sleeping, that affects my mental health, and they're all kind of like intertwined. I think a lot of the things that I've been going to the doctors for, thinking it was a physical symptom, a lot of the time they've said to me like, oh, that's stress, or that's anxiety. And like these things can manifest as a physical ailment as well. So I think it's kind of being aware of what our body's telling us, as well as our mind, as well as our heart, as well as our intuition. Because you might be thinking everything's great, but there's something within you that's kind of switching off, or like sending you like warning signals, or alarm bells are ringing somewhere deep within you. So it's kind of like recognizing when you feel good and when things are all going well, and then recognizing what it feels like for when your body's trying to tell you something. And then you can kind of go through the process of like, what did I do that day? Or like, was it something someone said? Was it a social situation? And you kind of go through that process of elimination and just figure out like what actually makes you happy and what you want from your relationships and friendships, and what you value. And I think this is something that we can like reassess and go back to again and again as we get older and as we go through different things. I know personally, after I went through different things like bullying through like in my childhood, or even more recently like leaving a relationship that kind of got very toxic towards the end, and kind of had warning signals the whole time, red flags that I just kind of overlooked because I cared for them, and because that's the sort of person I am. I like to see the good in people, and I really believed that things might change. But like after going through that experience, I've kind of been able to just kind of sit in my own space and be content with being single, and being content with just being in my room here, doing my art and doing things that make me feel happy without having the drama and the stress of having to second guess what someone's doing, or just having like a negative energy around me. And it's kind of made me more aware of the boundaries I should have been setting in the beginning. So like after going through that and ending that of my own accord for my mental health, I think that's kind of fed into how I treat my friendships and my family relationships as well. I am more outspoken, and I will just be honest and just say to people, I don't appreciate what you said there, or your tone was, your tone upset me, and just kind of be more communicative. I don't know if I said that right, but just communicating what was said and done and how that made me feel, and giving them the opportunity to apologize or adjust their behavior. And yeah, just being more assertive, I guess, being more standing up for myself, and being the person I've always kind of wanted to be. Because growing up, when I was bullied, I would usually avoid, run away, or just cry. I never really stood up for myself. And that's something that now that I'm older and I'm going to be entering my 30s soon, that's something that I want to kind of bring into that as well. And just seeing other people around me being able to do it, and talking with older people as well, specifically women. I think when I see older women being able to just, shout and assert their authority and dominance, and stand up for people that don't have a voice and who aren't able in that moment to defend themselves. I've found that really inspiring, and that's something that personally I want to work towards. And even doing these videos right now, I think it's something I'm kind of challenging myself to be. I've always kind of been a speaker and a talker and a yapper, but actually being candid and being vulnerable in a way, and being able to express things that maybe I in the past wouldn't have been able to just put on the internet, but I feel like there's such power and also strength, and just being able to help others, even if it's just one person and they watch this or they listen to something I've said and they think, wow, like that's reminded me I should be doing this, or like I have been struggling on my own, but this has reminded me that I can ask for help, and I have these resources, whether it's going to therapy, going to your GP, going to an old friend, opening up to a family member, even like an online community, maybe going to like a forum or finding a safe space for you on the internet where you can maybe even anonymously ask for help. Like, I think there's always so many ways around these things. So it's kind of like being open and just seeing what you're comfortable with and doing things on your own terms. But yeah, like that's essentially why I want to share my work and my story, and that's my plan for this account, is to both challenge myself but also to uplift and educate and support others who may be experiencing some similar things, or who just find something that resonates with them. Maybe someone who even is creative themselves, who have had an idea for a long time but they've never done it. I really understand that struggle, because even now I'm like linked in with like the potential ADHD thing. I have all these different ideas and projects, and I'm always writing them down. And like even as a child, I would be writing novels. I'd be designing, like doing a little interior design of my perfect dream bedroom. I'd be on The Sims creating all these buildings, because I've always been interested in design and art in general, and also making up songs. And that's something like I'm currently going through at the moment, where it's like I obviously have like my visual art and things that I want to create, but also I'm writing about my life story, kind of as another therapeutic thing and like a journaling thing, where I can put down my emotions and kind of go through things from my past that were painful. And also I've got a terrible memory. My long term's better than my short term. So I'm kind of revisiting like childhood, bullying, my thoughts on religion and growing up in a religious house, my thoughts on growing up in a small town in Northern Ireland that's very, I would say, religious, conservative, and just kind of putting these thoughts to paper and actually having something physically that I can then be like, oh, I can go through this and kind of assess and reflect on these things. And it's been a process that's been very emotional at times, but also I think it's helped me work through issues just by trying to put them down on paper and realize what words I would use to associate with these things and how it does still affect me to this day, potentially, which I think has been like a really worthwhile thing. I plan anyway, to at some point either release that book, like autobiography, or create something kind of based on my ideas or based on my real life, like a script or a short story, character work, sketch, something. I definitely want to put these ideas into something that I can tangibly say, I made that. And as a child, like these were the three things that I was always the most passionate about. I guess the arts in general. So it was always music, art, and English, specifically creative writing. And I used to write as a child. My mum had the photo and I can't find it anymore, but where I said, like, when I'm older, I want to be an artist with big hits. And she thought I said big tits, which was quite funny. But yeah, I've always imagined myself as a singer or like a traveling artist or someone who writes novels. And that's the way my brain was wired, even as a young child. I think I wrote that whenever I was maybe like 7. Like I was in primary school, and whenever I was asked what you want to be when you're older, it was always an artist. And I always used my art and my creative expression as a way to both escape my current kind of anxieties and worries and things that were kind of going on in my life personally, but it also helped me build confidence as a child. So while I was in primary school and I was kind of alienated and made to feel like I was different or weird, they always would ask me, like, can you draw for us on this like homework, or like not homework but like schoolwork. Or like I remember I was asked to design the outside of like a feedback tin for one of my classes in primary school. They had the idea of having a little like anonymous box where we could kind of put in our concerns and our worries. I'm not sure if we called it the worry box, but I was asked to do the design for that, and it was always something, like I won a few competitions as a child. I don't know if I peaked when I was a child, I'm not sure yet, but I did win. I remember one time, I can't remember what the competition was, but it was like a huge Crayola truck came to my house, and there was just so many crayons and markers and like a little like chest of drawers kind of thing, like twistables and all this sort of stuff, which as a child, like that was kind of like my biggest achievement, was having this skill or talent that people thought was that people admired or people saw the value in. So it was always something I kind of leaned on, and like throughout school I always like went into my art and design classes. Like that was where I really felt the most comfortable. I used to skive off my athletics classes and my games to do either art tutoring. That's kind of how I got away with it. I would tutor the younger students with sand, and I would also just do some of my own like little projects and coursework. And I always loved using new materials and new techniques. So I remember even back in school, I was kind of doing like batik and doing like digital prints transferred onto fabrics, which at the time wasn't actually recognised by the exam board. And I remember they kind of told me, like, I don't know if you're going to get marks for this. And I know now it's changed because obviously the curriculum and stuff has developed now, and I've seen people who are creating like sublimation printing and doing like digital textiles designs and things like that. And I also kind of just experimented more with sculpture. So that was a big thing as well, because I think my forte was always kind of more textiles and painting and like 2D. But then I went into I remember I made like this big like TV kind of head, and it was like a bust of like a robotic kind of like cyborg sort of thing with like wires coming out of it. I remember GCSE, I did my whole thing was about like psychedelic and like 60s inspired, and I got like a vintage 60s dress that I splattered with like paint, and like used Jackson Pollock as like inspiration, and I was putting like syringes on things. I was drawing mushrooms. Like I was always really interested in the 60s and the music of that time as well. Jefferson Airplane, Cream, like all these kind of bands. So like I always kind of used different time periods or music or other designers and artists to kind of base my work around as I was growing up. And then went on to study fashion and textiles, which at the time, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a designer, and I wanted to do kind of like contemporary. I will probably in this video kind of, or in a later video, show what my final collection was like, because even though it was fashion design, a lot of it was like very abstract in a way. I did all my own like painterly textile prints, and I was using recycled materials and things like that to make a statement about global warming and the world we're in today, and like industrial change, and how we as the fashion industry were contributing to a lot of the destruction and to the demise of our environment. So that's what I kind of did last in my fashion. And then during lockdown, whenever I was looking after my granny, and I had the idea, like I knew I wanted to come to London by that stage. So I was kind of just trying to keep myself sane in the house, and also just find ways that I could maybe involve her as well with her dementia. So I used to put on songs from the 40s, 50s, 60s, and I would be making little ceramic like bowls. But I was kind of playing around with different materials. I got polymer clay to try and do a bit of like beadwork. I got like a podcasting setup, which actually maybe I should be using now, but like just like a microphone. I was kind of playing around with like recording songs with her, and also just recording my own kind of covers of songs, and pushing myself even then to kind of expand my creative expression. And like painting, I was doing some screen printing and like doing my own prints onto clothing and like upcycling clothing. and customizing them with my own prints. So then whenever I came to London in July of 2021, I kind of thought, yeah, I've did the fashion thing, so I'm sure I'll get a job. So I kind of like applied for all these internships and graduate jobs and just everything that I could kind of get my hands on, even like unpaid things, and it just never really worked out. So I ended up working in retail, and once I actually moved into the house I'm in now, this is whenever I bought like this easel, and I did the first couple of pieces which I will be showing you that were based on mental health. I never really had to market myself in that way. People would just say like, oh, that's cool, like I like that design, or your clothes are really cool, whatever. But it wasn't as, I guess, yeah, being vulnerable, or it wasn't as nerve-wracking, I would say, as actually just being like, okay, I'm an artist. And I think even now, like, I do go around and say I'm an artist, but at the same time it's kind of a bit intimidating at times, because people will then ask like, oh, are you represented by a gallery? Do you sell your work? Like, how much money have you made? What's your long-term plans? Or like, just like things like artist bios and things like that, they are intimidating in a way, especially as someone who, like me, my traditional route in my education was all design based, and they kind of, even though my teachers appreciated the painterly things and abstract in my photography and painting, it always was kind of pushed to be like, this is going to be commercial, this is the end goal, and they kind of boxed me into that label. So yeah, I think it was, and still is, kind of intimidating to say I'm an artist, but I think I've kind of realised, even though I haven't traditionally studied fine art or did a master's in painting or anything like that, which a lot of the people I meet in London, I worked in a gallery for a while, and most of them had their masters, selling art regularly, like gallery represented, all of this stuff, which I'm still working on. It's still a work in progress, so I'm not ruling it out, but on paper some might say, oh, are you an artist? But the thing is, I think there's levels to it. Like, there's being an artist, which is like, this is what you do, you create things, you are making art, which is obviously what I'm doing. But then there's obviously other levels of like commercial artists, or like just really successful or viable, you know, in the market. But I think the bottom line is, if you make art, then you're an artist. So that's kind of what I'm figuring out at the moment. That's something I need to get better with, is actually marketing things and have different price points. So like have like different prints, maybe even merchandise. So like I'm not ruling out the fashion, because I obviously have the background of fashion. So like t-shirt prints or tote bags, badges, just like little things that people can kind of invest in and support my work without actually having to, you know, bankrupt themselves. Because I know personally, I think this is where a lot of the discomfort comes, is from my own background and how I've been raised and how comfortable I am financially, that I kind of assume other people are the same. But by working in art fairs and in galleries, I've realised, like, especially in London, there is a market, and there are people who this would be more than affordable, and they will want to support you in that way. So yeah, I think it's a whole mental aspect of it as well, and just kind of saying, and just recognising people have different budgets, people have different interests. Art is very subjective, so that's also something that I'm just kind of making peace with, that some people won't like it, that's fine. I think the main thing is that it is something that I'm proud of and something that I feel represents me or represents a part of me or a period of my life, and also something that gives me purpose and gives me peace of mind, something that I can like tangibly look at and say, I did that, this is the results of my labour. You know, it's just something that keeps me going, just as a therapeutic thing, and a whole process of just putting ideas on paper and being proactive and just opening myself up for criticism and judgment, regardless of what. Like, I'm not trying to please anyone, really. If the right person likes it and the right person likes me, then that's good. And if they don't, I can move on, I can live with that. So it's kind of similar to the whole friendship boundaries and things like that. Working through those people-pleasing traits and coping mechanisms that a lot of people have. I think it's a very common thing. And I think being an artist, it's kind of got an extra layer to it, because a lot of the time people adjust their art or they adjust their style to appeal to like what's popular at the time, what's selling, what's marketable, what people want to buy. So I think like there's different aspects to that, because I mean, fair enough, get your money. If making the marketable and commercial art helps you do something more experimental that maybe you couldn't do before, then that's fine. But I think it's kind of down to a personal preference, and also kind of figuring out, why am I an artist? Is it to make money, or is it to be authentic and explore yourself as a person and as a creative, and kind of push those boundaries and push yourself out of your comfort zone? I obviously went through quite a lot there. My back is kind of sore, I'm not gonna lie, just standing here. I kind of want to create a safe space for people to connect with each other, and this is the space where I'm just gonna play and hopefully make a difference in whatever way I can. So yeah, if any of this has uplifted you or inspired you or encouraged you, or you've kind of resonated with anything I've said, I would encourage you all to like my video, subscribe, and kind of follow this journey as I figure things out. Thank you very much, and you can subscribe anytime. Bye.